Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the case of Tim Bowman. First I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Timothy George Bowman was born on July 8, 1958 in Jasper County, Indiana. He went by the name Tim. He was raised by his father, Ronald, who was a pastor, and his mother, Mary Jane. In 1976, Tim graduated from Garrett High School. In 1981, he earned a bachelor's degree. Tim then earned 3 master's degrees from 3 different colleges. The last college was in the state of Oregon. Tim stayed there and took a job as an instructor before moving to a community college in the same state. In 1997, Tim met a woman named Naomi Kinney, who was 12 years younger than him. Naomi lived with her mother, Judith Kinney, in the town of Albany, Oregon. After Judith kicked Naomi out of the house, Naomi had no place to live. She moved in with Tim, and they became romantically involved. Eventually, the couple had 2 sons, Daniel and Benjamin. Over time, the romantic relationship between Tim and Naomi broke down. They argued frequently about how to raise their sons. In 2001, Tim moved alone to Bellingham, Washington, and worked as a professor at Northwest Indian College. There he taught science, history, and education. Not long after this, Naomi showed up at his house and moved in. She was afraid of losing Tim and desperate to marry him. Tim ended up giving Naomi an engagement ring, but then returned the ring and hired a divorce attorney. Naomi was not happy about this maneuver, not even a little bit. Before moving to the timeline of the crime, let's hear a word from today's sponsor, Delete Me. Over the past few years, I have covered a lot of stalking cases which involve a perpetrator easily finding personal information online. When people try to get this information removed, they find that it's extremely time-consuming. Fortunately, there is a solution. Delete Me is a subscription service that can eliminate this type of personal information that is for sale online. They have the straightforward mission of removing customers' information from search results and upholding your right to manage and remove your personal information. The privacy experts at Delete Me work continually to remove information from hundreds of data brokers. This gets rid of your personal data like address, occupation, marital status, age, names of relatives, and so on. How does it work? Submit your information to Delete Me, and their experts remove it. After that, they check every 3 months to make sure any new data get removed as well. If you want to get your personal information removed from search results on the web, go to joindeleteme.com/Dr. Grande. Delete Me is offering 20% off their privacy plans to all my viewers with code Dr. Grande. Again, that's joindeleteme.com/Dr. Grande, promo code Dr. Grande. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On March 1, 2002, 43-year-old Tim Bowman went to the hospital after believing that he had been poisoned, but medical professionals did not find anything wrong with him. 3 days later, on March 4, Tim failed to show up for work at the college, so a coworker contacted the police to get a welfare check. When the police arrived, they found that the doors of the house were locked. A neighbor told them that there was an unlocked second-story window, so the police used a ladder to climb through it. Inside the house, they found Tim's body on his bed. He had been killed by a single gunshot wound to the back of his head. The murder weapon, which was not located, was a firearm chambered in a 9mm Luger. Naomi was not in the house, but the police found a note that she left on the dining room table. The note indicated that Naomi had taken their sons and left because Tim had mistreated her. She only stayed as long as she did because she loved him, but she was not going to let him harm her sons. Naomi intended to get an order of protection against him, and he would never be allowed to harm his sons again. There was also a postscript. Naomi said that she did not know who stopped by that night to do business with him, but it, quote, confirms my thoughts that you are either doing drugs or selling. Either way, we are out of here, unquote. Not long after the police discovered the body, Naomi contacted law enforcement and indicated that she was at a safe house for battered women. She stated that she left her house on March 3, 2002 at 7 a.m. because Tim had mistreated her, which included giving her a black eye. The police thought it was unusual that Naomi did not appear upset after finding out that Tim was dead. Naomi mentioned that there had been a mysterious man in the neighborhood. This is the one she referenced in the note. This person must have been the killer. The police investigated and could not find any evidence of a strange man in Tim's neighborhood. They also looked into Naomi's assertion that Tim was involved in buying or selling drugs, but they found nothing to support that claim. On March 6, 2002, the police interviewed Naomi. At first, she denied involvement in Tim's murder and seemed very confident that she had nothing to worry about. For instance, she stated that she had studied criminal justice in college. She was too smart to get caught if she had killed Tim. As the interview continued, however, there was a major shift in Naomi's story. She admitted that Tim never mistreated her. He did not give her a black eye. Rather, Naomi struck herself in the face with a telephone. The purpose of her trip to the women's shelter was to lend credibility to her false accusation against him. At this point, Naomi explained the events leading up to Tim's murder and her role in that crime. She claimed that her mother, Judith, was worried that when Tim left, he would get custody of the boys. To solve this problem, Judith offered instructions to Naomi on how to murder Tim. The homicidal plot started on February 14, 2002, Valentine's Day, about 2.5 weeks before Tim was murdered. Naomi said that, following her mother's advice, she took 7 or 8 Ambien pills and put them in a pill crusher. She placed the powder into a peanut butter heart, covered the heart with chocolate, and gave it to Tim for Valentine's Day. When Tim noted that it tasted bitter, Naomi explained to him that it was due to the type of chocolate that she used. About a half hour later, Tim fell asleep, sitting up. Naomi put a pillow under his head. She expected him to never wake up. However, a couple of hours later, he woke up. Tim went to the bathroom and vomited, then went to bed at around midnight. Naomi called her mother and said that the homicidal plan was unsuccessful. Tim was still alive. Judith told Naomi to smother Tim with a pillow. After working up the courage to carry out this plan, Naomi put a pillow over his face and leaned on it. Tim pushed the pillow away and went back to sleep. After this second attempt to murder Tim failed, Naomi contacted her mother again. Judith recommended suffocating Tim with a plastic bag. Naomi tried that, but Tim simply pushed it off his face just like he did with the pillow. In total, Naomi had attempted 3 times to kill Tim, but was not successful. 3 days later, on February 17, 2002, Naomi once again gave Tim sedatives. Her plan this time was to push him downstairs, but she could not go through with it. Naomi called her mother Judith, who told her to put a bar of soap inside a sock and beat Tim to death with it. This method was also unsuccessful. After Naomi struck Tim in the head, he woke up confused. This sinister, savage, and slippery soap and sock smackdown brought Naomi's total murder attempts to 5, but she was not done yet. 11 days later, on February 28, while Tim was sleeping in his pickup truck, Naomi stuck a rag in the gas tank and set it on fire. This arson attack did not kill Tim. Naomi had now failed 6 times to murder him. By this point, Tim became suspicious that Naomi was trying to kill him. I wonder what tipped him off. 3 days later, on March 3, 2002, Naomi's mother Judith recommended a more direct approach to accomplishing the homicidal goal. She told her daughter to use oral sex to get Tim to fall asleep, then shoot him with a 9mm pistol. Naomi removed the pistol from a safe, but then found herself unable to pull the trigger. She called her mother and said that she could not go through with it. Judith encouraged Naomi, saying that she would stay on the line during the murder. With the support of her mother, Naomi shot Tim 1 time in the back of the head. After the homicide, Judith returned the gun to the safe, put the safe in her vehicle, and drove to her mother's home in Albany, Oregon. The women encased the safe in cement inside a trash can and disposed of it on the side of a road. Naomi was arrested and charged with 1 count of first-degree murder and 6 counts of attempted first-degree murder. In 2003, she pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder and was sentenced to 50 years in prison. For her part in the murder, Naomi's mother Judith was arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to tamper with evidence, tampering with evidence, and hindering prosecution. Ultimately, she pleaded guilty to solicitation to commit murder and hindering prosecution and received 4 years and 2 months in prison. On March 24, 2017, long after Judith had been released from prison, she was killed in an automobile collision. She was 77 years old. Now moving to my analysis. There is no question that Naomi and Judith were guilty. It's just a matter of how the blame should be divided between them. Naomi received a fair sentence for her level of guilt, but Judith largely escaped responsibility, only serving a few years in prison. Both mother and daughter should have received roughly the same sentence because this was a murder conspiracy. So, what happened here? Why did Judith get such a light sentence? Evidently, Naomi agreed to testify against her mother, but then backed out of the deal. This weakened the case against Judith and allowed her to get a great plea bargain. This brings me to the question, what do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. When she was younger, Naomi endured mistreatment at the hands of her mother, both physical and verbal. Judith was described as controlling and dominating. As a result, Naomi remained childlike and highly dependent on her mother. The central relationship in her life was with her mother. This influenced all interactions that Naomi had with other people. Naomi only became romantically involved with Tim because of a temporary fracture in the relationship with her mother. Again, Judith kicked Naomi out of her house. Naomi was extremely clingy and latched on to Tim, forming a dependent relationship, which mirrored the one she had with her mother. Tim confused her neediness with love and believed he had stumbled upon the romance of a lifetime. Over time, however, he realized that Naomi had a lot of deficiencies. For example, he felt as though she was not well equipped to be a mother, saying that she did not have a nurturing instinct. Her sons grew up in a very messy environment, the house was cluttered, and there was rotten food in the refrigerator. Her childlike nature did not prevent Naomi from being exceptionally manipulative and aggressive. On one notorious occasion, she allegedly conducted a twisting or pulling attack on Tim's private region, causing injuries that required Tim to undergo hernia surgery. Despite this terrible and treacherous targeting of testicles, Tim tolerated Naomi. He struggled with ambivalence, that is, he had strong feelings in two directions. On the one hand, he thought it would be nice to get married to Naomi. Maybe they could have a wonderful life together. On the other hand, he was satisfied with the location of his genitals and did not want them to migrate from their current home. When the relationship between Naomi and Tim started to break down, Judith was worried about the custody situation. She gave her daughter advice on how to kill Tim, but Naomi failed 6 times due to a lack of resolve and using a few methods that had a low probability of causing death. For example, the bar of soap in the sock. Considering all the different objects that can fit into a sock, why did Judith think soap was the most dangerous? Was she trying to send a message about hygiene? The fact that Tim stayed with Naomi throughout all 6 murder attempts speaks to the dysfunction in the relationship. He told people that he believed he was being poisoned, yet he did not leave Naomi. Tim gave her as many chances as she needed to kill him, and eventually she was successful. Any man who finds himself romantically involved with a woman capable of inventing an impromptu live-action version of the Nutcracker would be well advised to leave the stage immediately. Those are my thoughts in the case of Tim Bowman. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.